You always think, you see them on TV, they're so distant from you. And then when you meet them, you realize, especially the people we worked with, had the good fortune of working with, highly educated, pretty cool, easy to talk to. Once we started working in detail, not right in the beginning. It was formal, but then, as the days progressed, we became one seamless team.
The image we get on TV or in the media is so different from sort of how many of them are in personal life, right?
Yeah, they are all painted with the same brush stroke that, they're politicians, and God knows what people think of that word. And, in India, as compared to the US, the politicians' personal lives or uh, too much, even if they're in any scandal or anything, it doesn't get talked about. The scam will come on TV, but someone's having an affair with someone, or someone did something, or someone's taking too many holidays. Now, Rahul Gandhi's thing is coming out a little bit, but basically over here I see it's proliferated across the media. If someone's having some, there it's very quiet. It's a tacit thing that you don't talk about all this, which is why I think my book has interested people, because I have just talked about meetings inside 10 Janpath and in the war room and things like that. So many people were like, okay, you should be careful. I said, well, for what? It's the truth. It's what unfolded in front of my eyes, and I stand by it.
Namaste, bonjour, shalom. Welcome to the Author's Corner. Our guest today is Miss Jayshree Sundar, author of Don't Forget 2004, Advertising Secrets of an Impossible Election Victory. As you can see from the title, the book brings together two things that you don't often hear about, which is advertising and elections. The book is published by Vitasta Publishing. Jayshree has had a long, impressive career in advertising, working for Leo Burnett and Lentas, two leading advertising companies. She's also visiting faculty at many B schools. Perhaps she doesn't know this, but even she and I have one common thing in this case, which is we both taught at the Indian Institute of Management at Shillong, which is how the book starts. Jayshree, thank you for taking out the time to do this interview with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Jayshree, we'll start with the first question, which is, what's the 30-second elevator pitch for your book?
The 30-second elevator pitch for my book is cracking an almost impossible strategy for 900 million people. So it's a book on strategy, but it's not a textbook. It's written like a thriller. So it's a lot of grind, but you can turn the pages pretty fast.
And I agree with that. I really enjoyed reading the book, but let me take you back a little bit here. What motivated you to become a writer? You were a business executive. Why become a writer?
That's a really good question. From a very young age, I thought of myself as a very good storyteller. And it came from my father, who used to be the life and soul of every party. I think I picked it up from him. When social media came in 2007, I started writing on social media and not doing what people usually do, which is post pictures of parties and holidays and things. I would write about common insights, about India, about travels, about my impression on movies. And over time, it built up into something so popular that I have three very popular hashtags on social media. One is hashtag JMS comments, the other is hashtag India's beautiful, the other is hashtag movies with JMS. And I don't know, this huge group of people really kept saying, you write so well, you write so well. They would wait for my next post. Do a book, do a book, do a book. This happened. So it really came from people. It came from my friends, my students, my family. And even when I worked, I would take care to write a really good email. It wouldn't just be just something. So I loved writing, and yeah, it's a third phase of my career. The first was the whole big advertising piece. Then it's been teaching, which is I'm a professor at business schools, and I continue to be. And now it's writing, and it's been 3 books in the last 4 years. So let's see where that goes.
And I can tell you, I'll be using your example with many people because I think we need more voices of Indian authors, sort of globally, of Indian people writing about Indian things. So I'll be using you as an example. Let me
Thank
move
you.
to the next question, which is, when you told people you were going to write this book, what reaction did you get from folks around you? I'm assuming not everyone was as bullish as you were.
Everyone was more bullish than me. People were so excited. But this particular book I kept as a secret because of the nature of what I was writing about. Um, Actually, I finished it, and my family knew. Uh, my family on both sides, my husband's side and my side, which is my family. And but otherwise, it was after I got a publisher. That's when I told a few people, and then you know, I think the day I launched the book is when 95% of people came to know that I have this book.
And you kept it a secret because you said of the topic of the book, but that was because you felt people were going to push back?
No, no, not that people were going to push back, but because it was writing about politics, it was writing about an election. I wasn't sure of myself, the people who, I mean, I wasn't sure of my prowess as a writer. It was a whole mixed bag of things. And I wanted to get a publisher and publish this. And it faced a lot of roadblocks there once I finished writing. People would, big publishers, I don't want to take their names, they would say, you write really well. When you write your next book, contact us. So you get it. I don't know what it is, but then somebody else, a big name, said, why don't you change this book to all the elections in India? You can make this 30% and you write about all the others. I'm like, that's not my book. That's not my book. I'm not writing a boring book on the elections of India. This is a thriller. I mean, you're trying to change it. But then thankfully, I found Renu Kaul of Vitasta, and she was really bold. She read it. She said, okay, I'm doing this. And then when I think the editor read it, the editor was like, is this Jayshree Sundar sure she wants to write all this? So one day Renu calls and says, Jayshree, are you sure you're standing by everything you've said in the book? I said, it's the truth. And I stand by it 100%. It unfolded in front of my eyes. So I'm going with it. And then she said, okay, we're going with it. And it went without a word getting changed.
For those of you on the call who don't know Renu, let me make a plug here. I've learned a lot about the Indian publishing industry from Renu. We did an interview with her some time back. If you're interested in watching, it's on YouTube. But she's a phenomenal source if you want to learn about the Indian publishing industry, which is way more complex than most people realize. So let me move to the next question. When you started writing this book, did it all go as planned? You started, everything flowed, everything went exactly as planned, or were there things that happened you had not anticipated?
I'll tell you what happened. When I got the idea of this book, I called a Zoom call with my team, and for those who've read the book, you will see they're peppered all over the books. They're the heroes and heroines, my team. But it was so funny. After so many years, they got this Zoom invite from me. And I think there was a big whispering campaign going on behind, like, what does she want? Why are we all on this call? And then as soon as I called and I said, listen, guys, I'm writing this case study now. Oh my God, there was so much excitement. Everybody started talking on top of each other. Oh my God, do it. We should form an agency again. I think they really need us. and all that. Of course, we can't. Everyone's in their own field doing various things, but there was so much excitement. And the call ended with, "It's not your book, it's our book." So, in terms of help, yes, at the back of the book, there are a lot of photographs. I didn't have them, but Ali, who's in the book, he had all of them, luckily. Pooja, who was the creative director, one of the creative directors on this campaign, said, "Listen, if this book is coming out, I'm doing the cover." And her cover idea is so clever. It's a shredder. It's a graphic of a shredder because, in a political campaign, in any campaign, you have to keep the secrecy and you have to keep confidentiality. But in a political campaign, and that's the first thing we got briefed by them, was that not one ad can leak, because in the previous campaign, 5 years before general elections, almost every ad leaked. And so the rebuttal of the other agency would be in the same paper, sometimes in a page before even the main ad. It was such a joke. So they were like, if any ad leaks, you guys had it. So we had to put in so many checks and balances. I had a secret room in the office. And we had decoy names. So BJP was Mehra and Congress was Khanna. Don't ask me how we came up with these names. Probably my liking for Rajesh Khanna as a kid. So yeah, so we are going for a Khanna meeting, the Khanna secret room. So there was a secret room, there were extra armed guards, there were mobile phones which were unlisted. We had to change it halfway through because our lines were getting tapped. We used to work late in the night. Our executives used to get followed on that road. And there was a lot of drama, with all this. So we had one tiny shredder somewhere in the corner of the office. But given this, I had to hire for those months extra shredders. And every night we used to have to shred the papers, then take them off somewhere far, go and burn them. I mean, this is the kind of detailing that went into keeping the secrecy on this campaign and, each ad. So the cover design was a shredder. So the team was very much with me. The writing, I am a pretty disciplined person, and it was the pandemic. Nobody was talking to anybody. Everyone was just stuck in their house. So I would do 3 hours of writing in the morning and 2 hours in the evening, and read out those pieces every 2-3 days to my husband, who would patiently listen and prop me up with a cup of tea from time to time. All that bit, which was in my control, went very well. It was the roadblocks when I tried to publish. And, after I hit roadblocks with 5 or 6 publishers, I said, to hell with it. I will self-publish on Amazon. If nobody else reads this book, it will be me and my team. Oh my God, but getting an ISBN number in COVID time was almost impossible. And then, of course, I found Vitasta. And the rest is history. The book has done exceedingly well. We are in our second reprint. It's a very young book. It's got so much of media coverage everywhere, from podcasts to YouTube to television to print. And more than all that, I think my readers have loved it. If you go to Amazon and you look at the reader comments, so one feels validated. But when it came out, a lot of my friends said, keep a bag packed. What happened?
Keep going.
Yeah. So a lot of my friends said, keep a bag packed. If you have, somebody coming to your door, you should be able to run. But nothing happened.
So what I find interesting is that you were so committed to the idea that you would have even self-published it. Yeah. And even if the only people who read it were you and your team and probably some of the politicians you name in the book, and you would have been okay with that, like you were so committed to this?
I would have been sad about it, but I had to get this book out. Yeah. Because it would be such a disservice to this country, to my profession as advertising, to the world of branding, politics, the history of India, to keep perhaps one of India's biggest case studies tacit within me and my team. This is a story that had to be told. It was the 2004 elections were the first time global branding came into India. There were 2 huge multinational agencies pitted against each other with India Shining and Aam Aadmi Ko Kya Mila. Perhaps the two best advertising campaigns of all time, in India for sure, and I think on a global stage also. So it would be, a disservice to keep quiet about this.
Now let's switch to the advertising side here, right? I mean, you went to a business school, you were a student at a business school, you
Yeah,
also teach in a business school.
yeah.
We don't usually talk about advertising and politics in the same sentence. And here you are writing a whole book and in fact running a whole campaign that's sort of bringing together advertising and politics. Like, what do you think advertising professionals can sort of get from this book?
That's a really good question. And my headline answer to that is that all the strategy, all the discussions in air conditioned boardrooms or over coffee or whatever is fine. But the consumer facing work is through the advertising and the messaging. All that thinking needs to be put in a really smart way so that it reaches the consumer, what we call the mind, heart, and muscle. If I don't tug at the heart, it doesn't get to my mind. And in voting, okay, in politics, you have one day. If you're buying a soap or a shampoo or a car, okay, I didn't buy the soap today, I can go tomorrow. Or I can think about a car, I can go to various dealerships and then make my decision. Politics is very different. You have that one action day, which is that one voting day. And if you miss that, there's no repeat purchase, unlike a Pepsi, which I can repeat purchase daily if I want. So advertising has to really nudge the consumer to get out of their house and go and vote on that day. And in 2004, and I don't think too much has changed, we found that about 50% of India goes to vote. Maybe half of India just doesn't go. And the other big finding we had was that 30 to 40% of urban India went to vote, and 70% plus of rural India went to vote. They feel very empowered on that day. So, which is the consumer you're going to talk to? So, what I mean to say is that advertising and politics don't go together, because perhaps a lot of people think advertising is, it's about just a few people sitting, they're very edgy, there's a lot of glamour, there's models, and they come out with these ideas and they go and shoot these fab films. But absolutely not. I wanted to put a headlight on my profession that, it's tough. You have to drill deep, you have to go through the grind, there's research, you have to ask the right questions, you have to then carve a strategy. And how are you going to carve a strategy for 900 million people? That time 650 million people eligible to vote. That's the biggest target audience in the world, every Indian 18 plus. How are you going to go? Where are you going to target? So we actually took the blue ocean strategy, because India Shining, as you know, was pelting at the consumer. 400 crores of money had been spent. Full page ads, 60-second commercials. Everyone is so happy. That was the narrative being created, and urban India had bought into it. But when we went and did our research, because I had 1 week to pitch, but I was very clear that I'm not going to do this pitch without talking to the real consumer. And our thing was that, is there an unserved market? Because India Shining was talking to urban India and they had lapped it up. It was more of a manufacturing statement that the stock market is so high and the forex reserves are so high. But when we formed a hypothesis that, is there an unserved market? And we realized that middle India and rural and the lower middle class and the poor people, actually I would put them all under the band of a striver. The strivers. I sent out research teams on video across the country. And we asked this question, Bharat Uday, because India Shining in language was Bharat Uday, के बारे में सुने हो? And they're like, क्या? वो क्या? आपका लाइफ लास्ट 5 years में कैसा रहा है? एकदम बेकार हो गया है. So unless you talk to the consumer, you get it from the horse's mouth. And I had it on video, and we played it in our first pitch meeting. There was a 4 minute clip of a number of these consumers all saying this. And that is where formed the crux of the strategy. India shining, lekin aam aadmi ko kya mila? And then you take that one strong message and you push it down. And in politics, you've got to push it down to the village well, to trees. I mean, these are the things that even become your advertising medium, not just television, So yeah, it was very different and tough.
See, in a few minutes, we'll come to this issue that you raised in your answer, which is how can advertising help to increase voter turnout? Which, as you know, in the US, in many European democracies, in India, that's a big problem, voter turnout. So we'll come to that in a few minutes. And this whole idea that you had, which is blue ocean strategy and untapped market. And in a
Right.
few minutes, we'll come to sort of, what sort of would be the untapped market sort of going forward, but we'll come to that. Before I ask you my next question, let me tell the audience, please feel free to raise your hand, ask questions, raise your hand so we can call on you to ask questions. You can also type your questions in the chat box. The way we've structured this interview is we want questions from the audience. This is not just Jayshree and I talking. This is us asking questions to Jayshree. So and learning from what she has to offer. So Jayshree, let me ask you the next question. Now, you've named names in the book.
Yeah.
And you've also shared sort of the backstory that people don't see in your interactions with these people. Did any one of them reach out to you after the publication of the book and sort of said, hey, this is not how I remember it, or thank you for not sharing everything? I mean, did any of them reach out to you?
Not at all, because everything I wrote is the truth. In fact, yes, they reached out to me. They're very happy with the book. As you know, Mr. Jairam Ramesh wrote the foreword of my book, and we worked in the war room very closely. He tweeted the day my book came out. He's tweeted 2 or 3 times. Mr. Salman Khurshid called me up. He was busy in the UP elections, but he came back. He got the book, and he said he was very, very, very happy that I'd written about it. Shamim, with who the book starts, rang me up many times, helped me to open up distribution in bookshops. The higher ups in the parties have written letters, and yeah, it's been received very well by the party.
So generally, the reception has been very positive.
Yes.
Nobody sort of was upset
Not
at
at all.
you about this.
No, but what is there to be upset?
I don't know. See, that's the general perception we have in India, right?
Yeah,
That
exactly.
if we name names,
Exactly.
people are going to be, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, and I did write things like, when the budget was getting cut, we were in a meeting at 10J and people were massacring. That's not them. Every client does it. The great big multinationals do it. They make you work on something and then they realize they don't have the budget. And then they say, let's cut off this phase of the campaign, or let's reduce 5 ads to 2 ads, or instead of half page, can we make it a quarter page? And you're killing the strategy there and then. So I remember everything was just getting cut. And I did feel my temper rising very badly. And I have written about it in the book, because it's not a fairy tale. I mean, we're human beings, right? So I wanted to write about it honestly and truthfully. And no, nothing like that.
Well, that's good to hear. And I think that's going to be encouraging for many folks who also want to write about things, but they have that same skepticism, right?
Yeah.
Cynicism,
Yeah.
probably. Let me ask you something else, though. People look at someone like you and they think you were born successful, right? You have a good advertising career, you teach at business schools, you write books. But I'm sure you were not growing up thinking I'm always going to be writing books, right? So tell us a little bit about you growing up. How did you sort of become who you are? What was family life like? What was the environment in your family like? What was school like?
Also, I went to a convent school, a simple school, not a big name. It was St. Joseph's, and then I went to college at Elphinstone in Bombay, and I did my MBA at Jamnalal Bajaj, which was then the number one business school in the country. So yeah, that was my education. We are a family of five. I have two siblings, and we were not the diabetes kind of siblings, full of sugar. We used to have world wars, and we continue to have them till today. But I'm exceedingly close to them. They are very successful in their own right, and we are different, like chalk and cheese, all three of us. My parents were my father was an engineer. He was one of the first engineers recruited by Shell, to start Burmah refineries in India. My mother was a double gold medalist from the Allahabad University, which was at that time the seat of learning. They were they were like, if my father was the life and soul of parties, my mother was the perfect foil to him. She was more quiet and serious, and did the Times crossword till the late 80s, so her late 80s till she passed. So they were amazing parents. We had a very happy family life. And like every Bengali family, there was a lot of emphasis on education, but not just textbook. I remember my mom taking me when I was a young girl to the theaters in Bombay, vague places in Grant Road, etc., which used to run morning shows on movies like War and Peace and The Great Waltz. And she exposed me to the arts and, the great painters and the Renaissance. And my father was into adventure. We've driven the length and breadth of the country in cars at a time when nobody did it. So those were the things infused into me as I grew. And then, of course, my in-laws family, where I learned a whole different culture because they're South Indians and I'm a Bengali. So it's been a great confluence of cultures. And, that's what it's been for me so far.
So a typical middle to upper middle class family life,
Yes.
and with emphasis on education that led you, I'm assuming, to the MBA. When did you decide you were going to go into advertising?
You have Lintas was a day one company on campus, and I got the job on day one, but I was allowed to be in placement for 10 days. And this is not to show off or anything, but I had collected 5 jobs by then, and I had to make a decision. And my father was like he was a very involved parent with all this. He asked around, and he took the decision. He said, "You're joining Lintas." And I remember the words he used to me. He said, "Lintas blue chip company hocche, tumi Lintas join korbe." And of course I did, and I so grateful to him, and my book is dedicated to him. And yeah, it was a university of learning for me. It was just fabulous.
Wonderful. And that also goes to sort of show the positive role that fathers play in sort of daughters' careers and education. So
Right.
thank you for sort of bringing it up. We have a question from Yalda Azumi. So I'm going to unmute Yalda so she can ask her question on screen. Yalda, please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Hello to everyone, and hello to you, ma'am, Jayshree. I really feel privileged to be among all of you. I just want to give a little information about myself. I am from Afghanistan. I have done my bachelor in business administration from India, and I have applied for my master's degree at Columbia University. Luckily, I got the admission in applied and Master of Science in Applied Analytics. Yeah, so being in this meeting, it really reminds me of the memories that I had from India. I have from India, like India is very close to my heart. And also I really praise the women of India. Like I really hope to see a woman in Afghanistan also to reach to the level of education, power, and also the professionalism and everything. I praise about the Indian woman because my professor was and they were very kind and very good to me. I learned a lot from them.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Jayshree. This is Prashant Bhatnagar. Hope you can recall me.
Of course.
Yes.
Oh my God,
Congratulations on this
yes.
book. Yeah. How have you been? Thank you so much for this session. And I'm so glad I'm speaking with you after so long. And you have always led from the front. And I've always loved to, I think, interact with you each and every time I've done that.
Thank
So
you.
to cut the conversation here, to keep it short because there are many participants here. Did BJP also approach you after this success of this 2004? And second question is, if you were to create the same magic in the year 2024, what kind of key modifications would you like to do in the strategy, the media approach, or the methodology to study the consumer voice? To be very short, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so you had two questions. The answer to the first one is no. And the answer to the second one is 2024 is, of course, going to be the talk on it has begun. And it's a good 18, 20 months away. I feel given what happened in the assembly elections earlier in the year between Jan and March, where the Congress was defeated in all 5 assembly elections very badly. The narrative at that time in March was that, the story is over for 2024, and they'll have to now plan ahead for the next 10 years or something like that. But given what happened in 2004, I think they had lost 3 elections, not 5, just in December. And in May, they were forming the government 5 months later. So, you can never say never. But I think, of course, so many more years have passed. And today there's another very potent tool, which is social media. You can do a lot with it. And the BJP is very, very good at it. So they would need, okay, let me put it this way. Every country, especially an elected democracy, a big democracy, needs a very strong and good opposition. Otherwise, you're not really playing ball. And what happens is that while the BJP or the ruling government is extremely strong and more power to them, they work very hard, they're very aggressive, they never take a break. They seem to be doing some things that are very correct, and they have their followers and people who love them. But given that, there are also a lot of people who are desperate for a counter narrative. And I think the Congress party, though which is seeming slightly very weak actually at the moment, is really and has a national organization. It's got rank and file down to the last village. And today the game is being played to the last booth at the last village in the last mohalla. So while you have an Arvind Kejriwal who's increased his footprint from Delhi to Punjab and done really well, because he got 82 out of 117 seats there, or a Mamata Banerjee who pushed back a 8-phased election in the month of last year, in fact. And every BJP bigwig was there. And single-handedly, she pushed back and won West Bengal. She's taking her footprint into Northeast. So there are pockets of regional excellence. And this is a national party. And there has to be a counter-narrative built up. Coupled with this, if you look at the issues of 2004 and you look at the issues today, some of the issues are absolutely the same. Unemployment then was 43 million. Today it's 52 million. There are 52 million people registered at unemployment exchanges. God knows how many more. A lot of them are women. 48.5% of India is women, and very little happens for them. They're put on posters, they're taken to rally meetings. How many women get tickets? How many women are in leadership roles? I still feel it's a bit of an unserved market. Farmers, what's happening with them? Mengai, rising prices. So a lot of the issues are the same. Build a counter narrative. Now, what that's going to be is for the people who are doing the strategy to sit and figure out. But there is enough scope. Prashant, I hope I've...
Yes, wonderfully explained. Thank you. Thank you so much for your...
Thank you, Jayshree. And I have some follow-up questions, but we'll ask in a minute. Let's let Shiva ask the next question. Shiva, do you want to go next?
Hi, Jayshree. Great job on writing this book. Can you comment on how the advent of social media changes the advertising game for elections, especially like the use of social media in 2016 and 2020, the US elections, as well as 2019 Indian elections? I think social media was used a lot in politics, which it was not in 2004. Thank you.
Absolutely. In 2004, it was SMS campaign of Vajpayee ji and the website and things like that. But social media is a very, very big piece, and actually a very exciting piece. If you look at, Facebook is in India has around 400 million followers. Instagram has about 250. Twitter is way smaller. It's about 23 million. But the thing to note about Twitter is that if things trend on Twitter, it pushes back to mass media. So what happens is if something's trending on Twitter, the 9 o'clock primetime news on television will carry it. So it's symbiotic. It goes on like that. WhatsApp groups are a very potent tool of social media today. And YouTube is the #2 social media platform in the world. And it has 600 million followers in India, people using YouTube actively. Now, compared to going on national network or on, primetime news, it's expensive to buy time over there. But YouTube is way cheaper. Secondly, in the US elections, we saw a lot of live streaming on Facebook, on Instagram, and things like that from the politicians. It's still to start in India. In fact, when I was doing a bit of reading, because I knew I was coming into this interview and I was pretty sure this question would be asked, I saw that Alexandra Cortez, AOC, right? She's called, she is so active. She has a very potent social media campaign running the whole time. The last one she did was, a recent one was when she's assembling IKEA furniture and she's talking to her constituent assembly. So, that's the way you have to use social media. You don't need to be in that suit and tie. You can, today, because there's so much of data that you can get on social media, each person, what they're clicking, what they're sharing, where they're sending messages. So once that happens, you get to know each person's profile and you can target them accordingly. Now, the way social media works. For example, the big parties in India say that, oh, we just have 30 to 40 people using our social media, doing our social media. But actually, the way it works is that it goes to foot soldiers. So there's a whole network they use. So it will go to a foot soldier, say in UP, who will then pass it on to another 50 people, the message, then another 50. So for example, when Priyanka Gandhi went on a day trip during the UP elections, she reached, then she took a boat somewhere, then she went somewhere. So every 15 minutes, there was an update on social media. Okay, she's reached here, now she's here in the boat. So you can be so live and so current, and you can keep, saying things to your constituent assembly. You can make counter narratives, you can rebut. So because politics is the new entertainment. You know, earlier you used to say it's cricket and Bollywood. I'm adding a third. Because what is not there in politics? There is an antagonist, there's a protagonist, there's mystery, there's suspense, and there's a resultante. And it's playing out like a movie. And the one thing that can really engage with you on that is your social media. So we're going to see a lot more of it. And I'm sure in the next Indian elections, 2024, you're going to have people coming live the whole time.
Thank
But
you.
the thing with social media is, again, you'll need good communication people, because your messages have to be pithy, short. Again, in politics, the one big differentiator is having a good slogan. And for example, let me talk about American politics, because you asked the last politics where Donald Trump said, let's make America great again. Good slogan, because it's competitive. What it's trying to say is that America is not great now, but if I come into power, I will make it great again. I tried to look for President Biden's, at that time he was trying to be president, his slogan, and I couldn't find it. I couldn't remember it. Then I tried to look for it, and it was tucked away somewhere deep. Going back to President Obama's Yes, We Can, you know, political slogan, when we're crafting it in terms of advertising, it's for the country. It's not a single brand. It's not a hair oil or something like that. It's a brand. So you're talking about hope, you're talking about positivism, you're talking about lifting the spirit of an entire country. And so a short, pithy line like Yes, We Can is really, really fired up a whole nation. And so for social media, especially, you have to do things that get you currency. Why do you think our campaign did so well? Aam Aadmi ko kya mila? Because that's what got currency. That's what caught on. And it became a part of current lingo. So there's so much of science that goes behind this whole advertising thing. There's art and there's science.
See, and what I hear you say is maybe political science departments around the world need to sort of lean more into business schools and learn more from business schools in terms of how to run campaigns. At least that's what the subtext I hear. Maybe it's self-serving, but that's the subtext. Anyway, let me ask you another question, and then we'll ask Sushma. We'll open it up for Sushma to ask her question. Are there any anecdotes in the book that you were debating whether to share or not? Any author, you know, there's choices you have to make. There's, you know, all sorts of questions you ask yourself. Can you tell us one anecdote that you were like, should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I?
Oh, there were many anecdotes. A lot of secrets are still with me, you know, which are not in the book. Yeah, there are 3 or 4 of them that I debated, and I said, what the hell, let's put them in. One was the Sonia Gandhi shoot for posters, which we were asked in the month of April. 20th April, the country went into voting. It was a 4-phased election. And posters are a very potent tool of communication for a political campaign. And while there were other thematic posters, she, as the leader who was leading the Congress Parliamentary Party, needed posters. So I've talked about that whole incident that took place when she was shooting, about, you know, how in those days there were no, I mean, or, you know, we had just kept it all so simple and real. And that's why it did so well. So there were no stylists and makeup artists, and it was her simple saris coming in, you know, and she was changing. And I mean, I think I would like people to read the book and, you know, figure out. So yeah, that part, because it was to do with her, and how kind she was to the team who went. And, you know, when she finished, there were many meetings, because it was in the throes of the election time. And she saw the photographer and our creative director sort of gathering their equipment, and, you know, they had finished. And I think she had said, I'm sending coffee, excellent coffee at 10 Janpat. So she, You know, when there were so many people, all these big politicians and people you see on TV, they were gathering their equipment and trying to leave from there very quickly. And from across the room, she saw them. You know, her eye caught them, though she was in another meeting. She walked up to them and she said, um, "Have your coffee, and then you can leave." You know, so simple things like that. And but it's a truth that happened, you know. So that was one. The other one was, oh my God, I think
That almost makes her seem like a grandmother, right? I mean, that's what my grandmother would say, drink your tea and then you can leave. So, I mean, that puts a very human face on these politicians.
well, grandmother is not how I would describe my interaction with her. I think decent, very decent, and cordial, polite, courteous, you know.
Okay.
And there was a time when we were asked to print the manifesto, because, you know, we were 3 months into working with them, and they had a lot of confidence in us, and they gave us this printing job for the first time and said, the manifesto for any political party is the document that you release, which says that if we come into power, we will do all this. And it's a thick book like that. And they asked us to do it, and we convinced them that please do it in color this time, you know, because the last one was so boring. It was a maplitho paper, black and white. Anyway, this thing was done, and the advance copies came to the agency, and when we looked at it, one of the pages was upside down. And we were like, oh my God, we're going to be cooked today. You know, this is it. This is the end. They're going to go on stage, they're going to launch this, then the media is going to get this, and they're going to say, how slipshod. They've printed a manifesto with upside down pages. So I had to hurriedly get my team, the printing press. We went and checked all 4,000 copies. They didn't know. We just went in there, asked somebody we knew there, opened the cupboards. It had been delivered in the war room. But you know, in printing, there's something called the printer's devil, where 1 or 2% of copies go wrong. And luckily, I think God was on our side. It was this, you know, so the only wrong printed copy came to the agency. Everything else was fine. So yeah, I wrote about this. So I wrote about the other person who threatened to send a legal notice because we had to get photographs for our campaign and we couldn't use public libraries because it was confidential. So you're not allowed to go. We couldn't go because news spreads around. Oh, so, you know, this agency is out looking for photos. They must be doing the campaign. And we had done a decoy act that the work is happening in Bangalore in our sister concern, you know. So this person from who we had taken the photos, I think the young executive who had been coordinating with her forgot to write that it was for a political campaign. And the day before, she rang her up and said, oh, I just forgot to tell you it was for a political campaign. So I'm sending you a letter, just approve that. And this person went absolutely crazy and said, you haven't told me, you've duped me, I'm going to send you a legal notice, and, you know, things like that. So we tried to remove that ad, and the ad was on the machine. India Today was printing it. But, you know, like a lot of crises in life, it just blew over. No legal notice came, nothing. So yeah, things like this. So yeah, there are a lot of real things in the book, a lot of anecdotes like this. Otherwise, I would have been writing a fairy tale, you know?
Yeah, and see what I find so amazing, Jayshree, is you described the decoy campaign earlier. You were talking about, these people following on the streets, all that. I mean, you almost make advertising seem like, like spies and intelligence and like a James Bond movie and all that, right? I mean, advertising was glamorous as it is. You've added sort of the whole spy thing to it.
I
I
just
mean,
hope my book is more than glamorous and more than spy and all these small little things. It's actually the real solid hard work, the rigor, the strategy, the cracking of the strategy, the whole research that you do beforehand, primary and secondary, the carving of the consumer piece. How are you segmenting the market? Who is your consumer? How are you going to talk to them? And then comes the whole ideation process, and then the slogan and the line. So it's a lot of grunt work. It's a lot of rolling your sleeves and pulling a lot of all-nighters and getting everything right. And then all the other things are the bells and whistles.
Well, we work a lot with young people, right? Because we are professors, and I think young people, that's what they're going to latch on to first, right? The bells and whistle, and then the hard work and the grunt and
I know.
you
Yeah,
know the all-nighters. I mean, yeah, but amazing description. So let me, before I ask sort of my finishing questions, let me open this up to Sushma, because I think she had a question earlier.
Thank you, Vishal. Great moderation, great questions, and fantastic insights, Jay. Having read your book, I can see the attention to detail that you've paid in writing the book. What is the one thing that you would like to share, either as your life lesson, as you've pivoted through 3 careers, or as you have written your book, to everybody who is in the audience?
What is the life lesson?
Your life lesson, yeah.
My life lesson, especially out of this, and okay, there's a little story. It's a fable, and we've all heard it as kids. It's about the 3 little pigs. And this is a story I would tell my daughter when she was growing up, and we still talk about it. That there were 3 little pigs, and the first 2 built houses which were very big and fancy but not strong, and the third one worked really hard and took his time and built a solid house. So when the wolf came, then his house didn't get pushed down. So I think there is no hard work pays. Let me put it that way. Maybe a very boring answer, but the thing is, there is genius, of course, but as they say, God is in the details, and hard work pays, and that would be my life lesson.
No, that was fabulous.
Yeah.
In fact, there's an interesting clip in that book. Who's afraid of the big bad wolf? The big bad wolf. The 3 little piggies singing. Yeah, that's a great sort, and a great, very inspirational. So thank you, Jay.
Thanks.
Mubarak, do you have a question, please? Yeah, you want to unmute and ask?
Good evening to all. Respected professor, thanks for your insights. Looking forward to read your book, and extending my sincere thanks to organizers for this opportunity. My question to you, professor, what's the most important takeaway you want people to remember after reading this book? My second question, what is the first piece of writing advice would you give to anyone inspired to write a book?
Thanks you, Mubarak. For the opportunity. I really like both the questions. So thank you. Jayshree, over to you.
Let me take the second question first, because I think the first question I've answered many times, I think, through the course of this talk. My advice to anybody trying to write a book is that, at least my writing style, is to keep it simple. Especially in today's day and age, attention spans are so limited that youngsters today talk in a different language. There's a different idiom, everything is short form. I'm not saying make it social media language, form your own style, but there's nothing to beat simplicity. And that's it. I would just say that's how I thought of writing. Keep the sentences. The old thing, have an introduction, body, and conclusion. Some of the old things, actually, people tend to push them away and say, oh, this is all old world stuff. It works, So, yeah, I would say that have an idea, work around it, form the structure of your book, and just start writing. Write 500 words a day if you can, write 1,000 words a day, build it up, keep reading, keep building on it, and you'll find you have your book. So everyone can write a book, that's for sure.
They just need something to write about. So
You need something good to write
yeah.
about. You need a subject, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jayshree, I'll ask two more questions. We are so sort of at the end of the time, so let's keep those short. First is, as a new writer, which writers were you impressed with? Who were your role models or people you sort of thought about emulating?
Lots of them. My genre to go to are autobiographies and biographies. I love those. But the one author, Indian author I'm going to talk about, that whose books I love and I've read and reread them, the short stories, the full books, is Khushwant Singh. He writes so emotionally, so much about himself, his early life in Pakistan, his grandmother, the day she died, how the sparrows came. He's funny, he's emotional, he's insightful. What a powerful pen, you know. So I was very impressed with him. And I again would like to give a shout out to my mother. I think she wrote very well. And I think this style of writing, simple sentences without too much complication, is something that I think I got from her.
Wonderful. And of all, before I asked this question, I was thinking which Indian author you're going to pick. And I will be honest with you, your answer took me by surprise, but I learned from the answer too. I hadn't thought you were going to say Khushwant Singh,
Yeah.
but it's impressive. So what books are you reading these days?
I do a lot of reading on my phone. So not just Kindle, but, you know, articles and things like that. I'm a magazine junkie, but I love books too. Currently, I'm reading, I read a book recently by Dr. Shoma Chatterjee from Vitasta Publishing, which is Satyajit Ray, From Frame to Frame. I'm a big Satyajit Ray fan, and I've taught myself about him in the pandemic. So I would watch a movie, then I watch his interviews on his props, his lighting, his editing, his music, what the world had to say. So many places in France and America have researched his films. I would read those interviews. I actually wanted to write a book on Satyajit Ray, but I think she beat me to it. This book has, you know, all his movies are so famous, but this has little scenes, little people, the small actors. I mean, she's gone into all those details. So I enjoyed reading that. I'm currently reading The Last Princess by another author I love, Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni. It's about Ranjit Singh and Punjab's last wife, his favorite wife, who had to become regent when her son had to take the throne at the age of 6 after his passing, and how she fought the British. So it's a story, it's about the freedom movement, it's about a brave woman. So yeah, this is the book I'm reading right now.
And I think there's a Hollywood movie about her son who had to become the regent. I
Yes.
forget the name now, but
Yes.
you've given me two good ideas for people we can interview on this show going forward. Last question, and I promise this is the last question. What book are you working on next?
So I had 3 concepts in my head, and I'm happy to tell you I've zeroed in on one just 2 days back, and I'm going to start writing. Actually, I'm going to start researching. I have bounced the idea. It's a book on millennials. It's about people in their late 20s, the issues facing them, the pressures, love life, dating, etc. I have a huge amount of people who are ready to talk to me. It's going to be fiction, a full masala book, but based in reality. So this is what I'm thinking right now.
Are you telling me Jayshree Sundar of the Do Not Forget 2004 elections fame is now going to be Chetan Bhagat 2.0? No.
No. By the way, Jayshree Sundar of 2004 also has 2 books before this, and one published a bestseller just that came before this, which was the Tamram's Recipes, which is a cookbook. So, you know, it's different genres. I'm just exploring. but no Chetan Bhagat kind of thing. More power to him. He has a huge following, not talking down. But my book will be my book, you know.
Okay. On that note, Jayshree, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us. It's been a very informative and learning session for me. And thank you for waking up early to talk to us.
Firstly, thank you so much. It's been so much fun talking to you. So easy dealing with you up and down our emails. You're in India. You're where I live, and I'm where you live. So, yeah, it's 6:30 in the morning here, and thank you for this. It's been fun. It's really been fun.
Thank you, Jayshree. Take care.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much. Bye-bye.